Our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack. And insidious fear is reaching through our schools, our businesses, our homes, and into our private thoughts. The fear to speak in America. Power can rewrite history with grotesque, false narratives. They can make criminals heroes and heroes criminals. Power can change the definition of the words we use to describe reality. Diversity is now described as illegal. Equity is to be shunned. Inclusion is a dirty word. This is an old playbook, my friends. There's nothing new in this.
CBS News veteran journalist and Lubbock native Scott Pelley, though you never know that from his accent, from the commencement speech he gave last week at Wake Forest University. It's Wednesday, May 28th, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. In these closing days of the 89th legislature at Progress Texas, we're preparing to shift into election mode. Both the November 2025 elections, featuring several constitutional amendments emerging from the session, the next U.S. House member to represent Harris County's 18th congressional district and important local elections across the state, and the November 2026 elections, which themselves will present the best and some might theorize the last opportunity to place a meaningful check on the Donald Trump regime, which Texas Democrats in D.C. are already working on. Dallas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett appeared on MSNBC this week and said that she fully anticipates that congressional Democrats will retake the House next year and guarantees that once that happens, lawmakers, quote, will do what we are supposed to do as constitutionally sworn members of the House. We will investigate, look at whether or not the president himself has violated the emoluments clause as relates to, say, such things as getting a $400 million plane from the Qataris. There is no shortage of things for us to dig into and determine whether there were not only violations of our law, but of our Constitution as well, unquote. Demian Bio at the Latin Times adds that Crockett also says she'll seek to become the Democratic ranking member of the House Oversight Committee following the death of Representative Jerry Connolly last week. Meanwhile, Austin U.S. Congressman Greg Casar has been making the rounds discussing an investigation into a connection between Trump's tariff negotiations with foreign countries and Elon Musk, alleging that those tariffs have been used to extort those nations into entering business deals with Musk's various companies. Progressive Democrats are chomping at the bit to stop the Trump machine in its tracks. Everything rides on the next couple of November elections. And at Progress Texas, we're ready to rock. Do stick with us. The other side is in full gear as well, make no mistake, and they'll fight like hell to keep their grip on power. Look no further than the anti-democratic, anti-voter, anti-First Amendment legislation making its way to Governor Greg Abbott's desk as the session winds down this week. In particular, for elections in Texas, a dire threat. Saul Elbein at The Hill writes that Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, perhaps the most notorious MAGA culture war aggressor outside of D.C., is set to gain new powers to interfere in elections in Texas. Yesterday, the Senate passed House Bill 5138, which enhances the Attorney General's office's election investigation powers. That's headed to the governor, as is HB 45, which gives the AG new latitude in targeting cases of human trafficking. These two new laws in conjunction would unleash Paxton and his office to probe any allegation, however flimsy, of election fraud in all corners of Texas, and cases that can even remotely be construed as human trafficking, including the assistance of recent migrants, homeless people, or others by nonprofit groups. Efforts in both respects by Paxton over the last couple of years have been restrained by the courts. Those limits will no longer exist under these laws. Elbein reminds us that Ken Paxton has long intertwined cases of election fraud with migration via false allegations of Democratic conspiracies to tilt elections with the votes of undocumented people. Stories that remain bullshit, of course, but Paxton will now be able to cause untold disruption with this type of disinformation. Look for him to use these new powers widely over the next two election cycles here in Texas. Also spitting in the face of American Democratic norms, Jessica Priest at the Texas Tribune says Texas Republicans in the House have given initial approval to SB 2972, which would be a new law severely restricting political protests on Texas college campuses. Curiously, just a few years after those same Republicans passed a 2019 law requiring colleges and universities to ensure that all outdoor common areas of campuses can be used to stage protests. But that was after Texas A&M had canceled a white supremacist rally, and Texas Southern had pulled the plug on a speech by MAGA State Rep Briscoe Cain. Tyler Coward, an attorney with the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, or FIRE, has called provisions of the bill flatly unconstitutional. SB 2972 passed the House yesterday easily, 111 to 27. That indicates broad support from Democrats. Mentioned yesterday that the session's been relatively quiet on guns. Perhaps I spoke too soon, as the House gave preliminary approval yesterday to Senate Bill 1362, which would outlaw red flag laws in Texas. Those are laws designed to take guns away from people suspected of violent crimes or having made threats of violence. Zach Despard of the Texas Tribune writes that red flag laws, which have existed in various U.S. states for over a quarter of a century, usually allow family members or police to formally ask a judge to temporarily seize firearms from an individual who poses a risk to themselves or others. But SB 1362 would prevent that from happening in Texas against any person who has not been formally charged with a crime nor targeted with a formal protective order under the Texas Family Code. Yesterday's vote on this one fell on party lines. Texas lawmakers are taking steps to place limits on your ability to sue for compensation should you be injured by someone else's negligence. Amanda Henderson at KHOU-TV in Houston says Senate Bill 30 is supposedly designed to limit what co-sponsor and Republican State Senator Charles Schwartner calls exorbitant compensatory awards in lawsuits by juries. But critics say it will give defendants and insurance companies new opportunities to leave injured people hanging out to dry. Houston attorney Brian White says SB 30 contains, quote, multiple different factors that the insurance company could use to say we don't have to pay the full amount of those medical bills. This will give that company one more reason to say we're not going to pay you fully and fairly, unquote. Austin attorney Adam Lowy says, quote, we've beaten back the worst of this legislation, but the ongoing attempts by facets of the GOP to harm injured people are shameful, unquote. Still more ugly on its way to becoming law, and yet another from the Trib. Eleanor Klibanoff writes that in the wee hours of this morning, the Senate approved HB 229, also on straight party lines, 20-11. It strictly defines men and women based on their reproductive organs. This is the so-called Women's Bill of Rights that even its supporters say is about keeping men masquerading as women from entering ladies' rooms across Texas, but is clearly just another step in the continued marginalization of trans people, a minuscule minority, but one that Republicans have had great electoral success in targeting. In fact, a new campaign ad by Georgia Congressman Buddy Carter targeting the trans community has been making the rounds this morning. HB 229 has already passed the House and will now go to the governor's desk. Just a few more days of this, y'all. Sine Die is coming up Monday, and so far, there don't appear to be any serious threats of special sessions. I mean, why would there be when the Texas GOP is in complete control and can do whatever they want? Our work is very much cut out for us here in Texas. North Texas friends, please mark your calendars for Monday, June 9th. That's when we'll be hosting our 15th anniversary celebration in Dallas. Links to become a supporter and to secure your tickets are up now at ProgressTexas.org. Shout out to our generous event sponsors, Howard Cleon, Charles Zeller, Pamela Pearson, Alex Andrade, Scott Elphinstone, the law offices of Domingo A. Garcia, PC, Carol Taylor, Chuck Cruz, Amy Forehand, Eric Johnson, and Dr. Mark Parker, John Mazzaro, the Honorable Gene Wu, John Cotter, the Honorable Adam Basildua, and many more. Thanks, y'all, for the support. We appreciate it very much, and we look forward to seeing you again June 9th in Dallas for 15 years of progress. Tickets now at ProgressTexas.org. Our mission in Progress Texas is to counter the conservative disinformation machine, but they far outmatch us in funding. Oil and tech billionaires and religious right-wing activist groups spend a lot of money keeping their audiences in the dark. If you've come to appreciate the light that we shine on important political news in Texas on a daily, ongoing basis, please know that our regular, everyday listeners form a key component of our funding, and if that's you, we could use your support as a monthly contributor, and no amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks to Amy O'Neill, Alan Carell, and Valerie Carrillo, all of whom have joined the team lately. We appreciate all of you very much. While you're at the website, make sure and hit our web store to grab the merch to match your progressive values. Y'all means all, Revolution, our most popular Humans Against Ted Cruz t-shirts, all union printed right here in Texas. Awesome stickers and more, all at progresstexas.org. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning.